Welcome to My Money, Your Money, a weekly talk show on generational wealth, wealth management, and personal finance. Now introducing our host, Bridget Lumpkins.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to My Money, Your Money, where we talk about all things money with the goal of closing the racial wealth gap. I'm your host, Bridget Lumpkins. I earned an MBA from Wharton and have worked at such firms as Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, covering both private and institutional clients, as well as raising capital for investment funds. Today, we have Will Cyrus joining us. He's a bold entrepreneur, having left the consulting business and starting his own luxury home development company in Dallas, Texas. A native South Floridian, Will was educated at the University of South Florida in Tampa and also boasts a background in insurance. With a focus on the greater than $500,000 single family home market, he is carving out a unique niche in Dallas that is sure to continue growing while his star ascends. And if he looks familiar to you, that is because he was on season 9 of Ready to Love, Dallas Edition. Will, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Bridget.
I appreciate you. So you have quite an interesting, somewhat eclectic background. I think the guest is really the best person to tell their story. And there are likely several topics around which you can educate our audience, but let's focus on what you're doing right now and how you got there. Can you walk us through your decision calculus to move from the insurance industry to consulting to single family residential development?
That's a great question. I'll tee it up this way, not to sound, like somebody granddaddy or somebody pastor, you know. I know Sunday was a couple days ago. I might take you to church for a little bit.
Uh-huh.
In all honesty, it was a God decision. Even getting into insurance, God led me to insurance. Before insurance, I was always in finance. So my background has been heavily rooted in finance. I had my Series 6, I had my series license, had my insurance license. So I worked at Fidelity Investments. So I did time there when I first relocated to Dallas. So did that. One thing led to another. God just literally led me to get my insurance license. Got my insurance license first year with my license, made over 6 figures. And I did a lot of my work primarily focused in urban communities, making sure that, our people weren't forgotten as it pertained to insurance. And I understood the power of insurance and how it could easily close the wealth gap. So, I had a very big passion for doing so. Had a lot of big cases on the more so, eclectic upper side, right? So I dealt with a lot of doctors, lawyers, attorneys, and 6 or 7 figure business owners. And then God just, and doing work in the lower income community, that's a lot of those old school grandmas that had land. So, you knocking on the door, right? I call it being Billy Graham and the door knockers. I'm knocking on the door.
Right. Sure.
I'm trying to get you insured, but what I figured out was there was so much land in these lower income communities, specifically in Dallas. At the time when I was buying land was $1,000, $5,000, and I can literally buy it, from a resident for 5,000. That same
Wow.
land today in Dallas is 50 to 100,000.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
God just led me, to the development route because I was getting land for so cheap back then, building the relationships on the insurance side, writing, these older ladies' policies. I was the first person in their houses. Before like all the other developers started coming into the area buying land from them, I had first dibs because I built, that rapport and that trust, not
Mhm.
even knowing that I would even get into development. God was just setting my foundation and my steps at that point.
Okay, that's really interesting. And getting into developing because real estate is a very specialized field, right? And there are very few Black developers at any level, right? Doing any class of property at any price range. According to a March 2023 New York Times article citing a study funded by the Siegel Foundation of the 112,000 developers in the US, fewer than 1,000 are not white owned, right? And of the almost 400 generating over 50 million in annual revenue, one developer is Latino, and there are no Black owners of those development firms at that $50 million and up. number. What is your ambition in this context?
I mean, if the Lord say so, I want to be one of the first to make it to 100 million.
Okay.
So I'll say it this way, right? So from an ambition perspective and from a goal aspect, this year, if not this year, for sure next year, I'll hit that 20 million mark, right? As far as
Okay.
revenue.
That's great.
So in the pipeline right now, currently, I have 6 homes that are going to be selling anywhere between 2 to 3 million, right? So if you
Mhm.
add that up, that gets me, closer towards my $20 million goal. And then going into 2025, I have another 10 homes like that I'm building as well. So, making it to 50, it's a very, very hard number to do when you're running your business as a solopreneur, right? The easiest way to transact up to that 50 million, 100 million, 250 million is to build viable partnerships, right? A lot of these other developers, right, whether it be white, whether it be Asian, whatever the case may be, they understand the power and strength is in numbers, and that our community, everybody wants to be the first, the big dog, the top dog.
Mhm.
And there's so much power in unity. And until we get to that marker, it's gonna be extremely difficult for us to bridge that wealth gap. So for me, I'm working and I'm thinking through those strategic alliances so that we can get to that 50 million, 100 million, 200 million marker much faster. Because I can do 15, 20 million on my own regardless in revenue, right? That's super easy. You look at it
Mhm.
from a profit aspect, you know, a good developer, you want to make anywhere between 25 to 35%. So
Mhm.
if your revenue is 20 million, it should be no reason why you can't make at least 30% of your revenue if you're doing the
Right.
numbers right before you get into the deals, right? But to your point, to get to that 50 million mark, you're going to have to partner with 2 or 3 other like-minded individuals.
You said something so profound, and I've observed this throughout my career and in other businesses, not just real estate development, but in other business sectors where a lack of unity or trust or a desire to sort of be the only or be the first has undermined success and the ability to join forces and be bigger, right? Be more of a conglomerate, right? There's a lot of ego that gets in the way. This is something I've observed in the realm of my day job in the investment business, to my dismay. And so, you it's discouraging to hear that that's at play also in the real estate development market, but it doesn't surprise me given our history and the very unique circumstance Black folks find themselves in the U.S. That's a little beyond scope, but we'll have to bring you back to talk about that another day because
Absolutely,
that's a really
absolutely.
profound idea. I do want to talk about though how you got started. So you mentioned it was kind of a faith based decision that you were led by your higher power on this path, but how did you learn what you needed to know? And like, can you like walk us through how you even got started? Because one of the limiting factors, aside from the disunity, is a lack of capital. As you know from your experience, there is a lack of generational wealth. So you can't go to your uncle or your daddy's golf buddies or your cousin and them, Pookie and them are in your pocket. They can't help you fund a business.
We
So
sure
how do
can.
you start? How did you get started?
I think Bridge just an addition to that to piggyback on you, if I may.
Uh-huh.
In addition to the lack of finances, the lack of education
Right.
and knowledge, right?
Mhm.
Because if you had the knowledge that I have now, I could have probably did 50 million a couple of years ago, right?
Right. Mhm.
I'm just now learning the knowledge myself. And I would consider myself to be an expert, so to speak, in my field, right? A lot of
Mhm.
people think of me as such. I've done great things. I've been a great innovator within my own city, within my own right. But if I had the knowledge, if I knew what I knew now, I
Mhm.
could have hit 50 million a long time ago. If I was more forward thinking, more cutting edge, if I took the time to study, the banking trends, the data and the analytics of a city, if I took more time to research from a city aspect, right? What were they doing from a master plan perspective?
Right.
So
So
no
you could
matter
like
what,
plan kind of because it sounds like there was serendipity in the sense that you had these relationships with these people who owned land and now that land is worth a lot more money. So are you saying that you could have planned that more intentionally and more strategically on a larger scale to to anticipate what areas were going to increase in value or be like the next wave of, development or gentrification or whatever?
Yeah, precisely, right? I like to call it modification.
Modification. Okay,
I
not
call it modification. I
okay.
think, in my humble opinion, gentrification, as the definition states, I always go back to boys in the hood.
Okay.
You seen boys in the hood, you seen boys in the hood.
Many times.
Okay, I was gonna do this now. Look, I was gonna, but you know the famous scene, Lawrence Fishburne, right?
Yeah.
And he's talking in the neighborhood. Then the old man says, "Ain't nobody bringing down the property value but these things." I ain't gonna say that word what he said, but
Right. Yeah.
it's close. And then Lawrence Fishburne goes on to, and I'm gonna summarize it. And he says he was like, it's where the quote unquote these guys come in and they bring down the property value, buy it at a loss to go back and repurpose it and do what they want, right?
Mhm.
So for developers like me and a lot of my friends, that work has already been done. Like the strategic, what's the word we want to use? The systematic racism or the systematic approaches were done long before I came into the picture.
Mhm.
When we look at an area, just to use where I'm at, right? Whether you're in Miami, but I'm in Dallas, Texas, and South Dallas, they've been bringing down those price values for the last 15, 20 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's similar to the redlining and the burning in the Bronx and everything. We've seen
Exactly.
the playbook many times. So I got caught up and we got to pay the bill. So I want you to hold that thought and we'll come back to talk more about Lawrence Fishburne.
So for me, it's a little bit more personal.
For the Mesman and Dover Law Firm, it's about community.
For us, South Florida's our home. You all are our people.
Our family, our future.
The difference we'll make for you, your loved ones, your kids, matters. Because to us, it's personal.
If you need us, call us 24/7 at 866-954-MORE.
That's 866-954-6673. The Mesman and Dover Law Firm, youraccidentattorneys.com.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/busdriver.
Okay, thank you for sticking with us, audience. And we're back with Will Cyrus, and we're talking where we left off before the break. We were talking about the sort of systematic devaluation of our neighborhoods over time that are then reinvested once the blight has taken over and then modified or gentrified, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, I think that's a very astute analysis, both from art imitating life, right? So I really am curious though, what qualifies you or any person as a developer? Are you a general contractor? Like, how did you learn how to build a house? How do you know that your product is sound? Are you out there with hammers and nails? Like, did you go to a carpentry class? How did it work?
Well, I grew up around construction, right?
Okay.
Growing up in the inner city, I grew up in Pompano Beach, Florida, which is very close to Fort Lauderdale.
Mhm.
My granddad was a masonry contractor. There was a lot of hurricanes that came through South Florida back in the day.
Sure.
Hurricane Andrew. My granddad was one of the first, I wouldn't necessarily call him a developer, but he was a great foreman, right? He managed a lot of projects and he managed a lot of those high-rise projects back in the day. So
Okay.
I learned the construction process from my granddad. I had to self-teach myself the business side, right? That's something totally different. So
Mhm.
it's the business side of being a developer, and then the construction side is simply being a GC, right? And as you know, in the state of Florida, to be a general contractor, you have to take a test.
Uh-huh.
I live in Dallas, Texas. In the state of Texas, you have to pay a fee. There's no GC fees because when you pull permits, the people who have to take the test are your electricians, your plumbers, and your AC guys, which is your HVAC guys.
Right.
So they've already taken all of their state board required tests so that you, as the developer or general contractor, you just have to pay fees. And from a banking aspect, right, in order to fund a deal, you're going to need experience from a bank.
Mhm.
So how the city looks at it in a lot of cities throughout like Texas is if the banks will loan you money for a project, then they've already vetted your experience as a builder, right?
Uh-huh.
So how you qualify as a developer, how you go from builder to developer is you get to a point in your business in which you're no longer GCing your projects. You're hiring a builder to build the product, to assume financial risk and responsibility for ensuring that the structural integrity is up to code with the city, but more importantly, that they have the right insurances in place so that in the event that something happens, you're able to file that insurance claim with that contractor line, right?
Mhm.
So if it's something wrong with the baseboards, you can hit the trim carpenter. If there's something wrong with the cabinet, same probably still the trim carpenter. But you catch my drift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
you don't have to. So, what would you, I mean, if a member of our audience is considering making a similar move, because I do know people who have like aspirations who would love to do this, but they're at a loss for how to get started. And I think it's really, really notable that this was passed on to you. There's some intergenerational wealth of knowledge that was passed on to you from your grandfather. So, you weren't starting from scratch. But say somebody doesn't have that advantage that you had to know the construction business and have some sort of understanding about how things work from, sort of your grandfather's tutelage. Um, what suggestions would you offer someone who really has a similar ambition to you, but, is starting from zero? What should be their first step?
just like me, like yes, my granddad, he had the construction, background, but he didn't know the business,
Mhm.
which is why he never advanced in his career to own his own business. He was always a laborer, right?
Mhm.
He got paid maybe 100 back in the day. If he was making $200 a day, he was balling.
Right.
Back in the 70s and the 80s, my granddaddy, he was hood balling,
Right. I mean, that's
but
kind of the best kind.
it's kind of right. Right. But um, you know, I wish my granddad took that further step in education to understand the business.
Right.
So I had to self-teach myself the business.
Mhm.
I had to jump in, like they say in corporate, I was drinking water out of a fire hose.
Right.
Um, my
Oh, the
first
corporates
deal,
love that term, don't they?
they do. I did my stint in corporate,
Yeah, you did your time. You said you did your time, and I clocked that. You did your time, and I hear you on that.
you hear me?
Very good.
Bu-
Definitely.
But I just think like that education piece is the biggest part and where I would start if I was someone that's new is like for instance, of course I have a course, but if you don't know someone who has a course or someone who can hold your hand, I think the
Mhm.
biggest thing is to go on a construction site, right? Or maybe just buy your first new build construction home. And every step of that process, you have to be there every day to say, okay, step one, okay, I'm saying to get ready to pour a foundation. How do you prep the lot before you pour the foundation?
Right.
Study that. Take notes. Okay, boom. Okay, they prep the lot. Boom. They put down the form boards. Okay, boom. Now they get ready to pour the concrete. Boom. Oh, before the concrete, I noticed that they had to put the plumbing in. And just learning that construction side and going through that entire process maybe once or twice in a community that's already being built will give you that construction knowledge to a T. And maybe like 3 to 6 months, you can learn that from just
Mhm.
watching a couple of homes be built from ground up, right? And just literally watch the whole entire process. And then two, you got to learn the business side. And how I would educate someone to do that and kind of get up to speed is to go into your local bank, right? Or you can go online and just look at what type of products they offer and service to builders and developers. You know, gain a better understanding of lines of credits so that you can get access to funding and financing for a deal, right? Sit down with a business banker and ask that person, like, okay, if I was to become a developer or a builder, how would I have to set up my financial profile? How do I need to appear to an underwriter to get them to approve $1 million loan, 500,000, 100,000, whatever the case may be? Learn the business side, learn their banking products, and then speak to like maybe 5 to 10 hard money lenders in the area and ask them, okay, I understand that there's a there's a big up and down with the interest rate market. Okay, how can I position myself today? because I know in 3 months you're gonna have a totally new set of rules. So just learning like that business side, that finance side, and staying with your bankers. Going on job sites. Even me, I'm still going on job sites because there's so much to continually learn. Because how are you going to pay a GC if you don't even understand what the price of a stud is, what the
Right.
price of an AC unit is? Because they can rip you off.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Well, I have more questions for you, but we need to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll finish.
So for me, it's a little bit more personal.
For the Mesman and Dover Law Firm, it's about community.
For us, South Florida's our home. You all are our people.
Our family, our future.
The difference we'll make for you, your loved ones, your kids, matters. Because to us, it's personal.
If you need us, call us 24/7 at 866-954-MORE.
That's 866-954-6673. Demesman and Dover Law Firm, youraccidentattorneys.com.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/busdriver.
And we're back. Thank you for staying with us. We're talking to Will Cyrus about his real estate development business. And so I want to hear a little bit about the biggest challenges you've had to date with your business and how you've overcome them.
whew, Jesus be offense.
Is that is that another show?
It's a show, but I'm gonna give you a mini version.
Okay.
I think initially one of the biggest challenges I had was with the climate of the interest rate market.
Mhm.
At one point in my business, people were getting homes at insanely crazy interest rates at
Mhm.
2%, 3%. If you had bad credit, 5% was high.
Right.
Nowadays, starting off right now, current speaking, it's about 7%, 6.5-ish
Mhm.
if you got decent credit. And then if you got bad credit, you're looking at 9%, 10%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just bought a place and the interest rate I choked. It wasn't 9 or 10%, but
She got good credit. Y'all hear that, fellas? Good credit.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for the answer. But that's a perfect segue. So I have to ask the obvious question about Ready to Love Dallas, right? So frankly, how did this help or not help your professional life?
I'll say this. I think it was a once in a lifetime opportunity and experience. Never thought that I would do a dating show. I was open to it. It was a wonderful process. Just to answer your question from a professional side, I believe that with my business, I'm more hands off. I'm more of a ghost, so to speak. No power. um, no one really knows that I exist. So when it
Okay.
comes to like my transactions and my deals, because I'm a developer, I mean, I'm selling houses in the price range of right now 1.5 to 3 million.
Right.
So I mean, from a professional aspect, no. From a personal aspect, you know, I didn't know the show was that popular, but now when I walk out, I seem to be a celebrity, a mini celebrity. Like, are you that guy from that show? I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh, no way.
looking around, I'm
That
like,
has to be so weird.
it is weird. It's something that I'm having to get used to because I didn't know that people watched it at the magnitude in which they did.
Mhm.
So it's a newfound reality that when you're walking on a trail, people looking at you crazy, that they're not looking at you crazy. They're like, is that guy?
Right.
So personally, it's a new realm, new world to get used to. But on a professional side, I was gonna kill it professionally regardless.
Right.
So it had no impact negatively or
So
positively.
you didn't get like
Neutral.
more followers to your Instagram to like help promote your business or anything like that?
No, I mean, I would say this, like maybe if I was on, let's just call it Love is Blind,
Okay.
or I don't know, Love and Hip Hop.
Right.
But I think from the aspect on the show in which I was on, it was more of a neutral show. Um, as far as followers and more exposure to my business, no, because the show doesn't focus on your business life.
Right.
And they try to focus on your dating life. So no one really knows what I do for a living from a show
Gotcha.
perspective. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense. So where can our audience find you? I know people really, really, what you're doing is very unique. You're obviously a trailblazer as a real estate developer. And I really want our audience to have an opportunity to learn from you. So I see your Instagram is here on the screen at Purpose Builder DFW, which is Dallas Fort Worth, right?
Yes.
And where else do you want our audience to come holler at you?
You can call on Tyrone.
Oh my God.
I'm messing with you. Instagram, I would say
Is the best place.
easiest way to
Okay.
contact me. You can check out my website at www.p as in Paul, B as in boy, D as in David, HOME, that's singular.
Okay, so that's Purpose Builder Dallas.
Yeah, PBD,
Yeah.
Purpose Builder Development, right? But
Development. Okay, development. Okay.
Yeah, pbdhome.com. Shoot me an email, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm pretty, I don't want to say accessible, but I tend to respond back in a timely fashion.
Okay. Well, that's great. It's been so much fun talking to you today. I really, really enjoyed it. I thank you so much. I hope everyone who is watching and listening has learned something and had a little bit of fun along the way on today's show. And, really just kudos to you and everything that you have built and are building. Hats off to you. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us, and let's work together to close that gap.
Amen.